Hi everyone, welcome to this fortnightly Tools for Frontline Staff session. We've got a couple of presentations today. We've got Babette, Becky and Dean here from Hestia to talk about awareness around modern slavery, and then I'm going to talk briefly about the government's new fund on digital inclusion. So yeah, thanks Babette, Becky and Dean for coming along, and I'm going to pass over to Babette.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here with you all today. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen, and hopefully you should all be able to see a presentation shortly. Yeah, my name's Babette. I'm the Modern Slavery Training Manager here at Hestia, and then with me on the call we have Becky.
Hello, lovely to meet you all. I'm Becky. I'm one of the service managers at Hestia's Modern Slavery Response Service.
And myself, I've met a few of you. My name's Dean. I'm a team manager for Hestia in the Modern Slavery Response team.
Wonderful. Sorry, please forgive me. I'm not used to using Google, so this is just taking me a little minute to go through this, but hopefully that should be on a wide screen now. Can everyone see modern slavery awareness? Yeah, we can see the slides. I'm not sure it's in sort of presentation mode, but we can see the slides. Okay, all right. That'll I think I might have to do. I'm so sorry. I can't quite seem to get it to go into presentation mode. But yes, as I say, we're from the Modern Slavery Response team, and we are one of the largest providers of modern slavery support across the UK. We work across London doing outreach support, and we also have safe houses as well. So we have 8 safe houses. But before we kind of delve into a little bit more about how you can refer to our services, I want to start by thinking about what modern slavery actually is. So I'm sure some of you might have already worked with someone who's gone through a modern slavery experience or something around exploitation. But I kind of wanted to start a little bit with some of the distinctions we have between modern slavery, people smuggling and human trafficking, because I think they certainly overlap a lot when we're talking to people who've gone through these experiences, but they all have quite distinct understandings. So when we're talking about people smuggling, to start off with, we really want to see this as a distinction that this is somebody's movement between 2 countries. It's always from one state to another where someone doesn't have the right to enter that state. So it's always a relationship between the person who's being smuggled and the smuggler, and it comes at a fee. But when that person arrives in their country where they're expecting to go, they shouldn't really speak to that smuggler again. That relationship has ended. But when that smuggler is potentially lying to someone about being a smuggler, and at the end of their journey someone is forced into doing something they wouldn't otherwise want to do, or they are potentially offered something like an accommodation or a job opportunity that's too good to be true, this is when we're starting to talk about human trafficking. But human trafficking as well doesn't have to be this international crime. It can happen inside countries, it can happen inside communities. We're really talking about the movement of people so that at the end of that movement, the goal was always to exploit them. So human trafficking fits under our definition of modern slavery here in the UK. Modern slavery is basically kind of an umbrella term really for the different forms of exploitation that we see. So I put this little definition here in yellow. It's a situation of exploitation that a person cannot refuse or leave because of threats, violence, coercion, deceit, or an abuse of power. And when we're thinking of what this looks like in reality, we have in the dark navy box in the bottom left the different forms that the Home Office uses when it comes to categorising these experiences. So sexual exploitation, this might be anything from kind of on-street sex work to brothels, massage parlours, or even online. Forced labour, this can be things like working in construction sites or working in car washes, nail salons. We see this quite commonly. Debt bondage often overflows with these other forms of exploitation, but what we're specifically talking about here is where money is owed by someone, sometimes for their movement into the UK, but it could be for anything really. It's a debt that's placed over someone that really there's not an intention for this to be paid back. It is there to kind of force someone to continue to work or be in these situations of exploitation for longer. We have forced marriage, which is where one or both people don't consent or can't consent due to capacity or age to a marriage. And there is a forced kind of a pressure going on from family, from communities for this marriage to go forwards. Criminal exploitation, which very much says what it is on the tin, people forced into criminal acts that they wouldn't otherwise do. So this is where county lines comes in under modern slavery very commonly, but also situations like cannabis grows or forced begging. And then we have domestic servitude. Very similarly, sometimes this gets confused with forced labour, but we're specifically talking about the work that is done inside people's homes. So often people who might be thinking they're working as nannies, as kind of staff in a house, cleaning, cooking, but the reality is that the work they're expected to do goes above and beyond. It's caring for kids all times of night and day, cooking food without being able to eat themselves, and sometimes even sort of upkeep and maintenance of a property as well. And very lastly, we have organ removal. So human trafficking for the purposes of organ removal is not the most common in the UK, but it absolutely can still happen. And this is where someone falls ultimately usually on hard times and agrees to sell an organ for a set price. However, when they recover from the surgery, that person isn't there, or the money they're expected to receive has dramatically reduced. So these are the main forms of exploitation that we kind of see across the world and in the UK today. But in the UK, when we're really thinking about what we might likely see, the biggest form of exploitation is forced labour, and it's hugely affecting men as well in the UK. And then when we're looking at adult women, sexual exploitation remains the highest form. And then when we're looking at children, criminal exploitation. And that again is due to sort of county lines. So what can you do then in your roles to kind of spot someone who might be going through one of these experiences of exploitation? There are lots of kind of flags, and what I want to say is not every kind of flag means that somebody is being exploited, but it's there to kind of make you kind of ask a few more questions, have that curiosity as to what's going on in these situations. So we'll start on the top left. We've got sort of paranoia of being tracked and followed, and this is really common with people who've had their movements really controlled. A lot of the time accommodation is tied to these exploitation roles, and people are really watched going to and from kind of work exploitation to the places where they're staying. Mistrust of authorities and police, and we're going to have to take this with a pinch of salt because we know what the kind of climate is in the UK currently, but absolutely traffickers will use this entirely to convince people that if they reach out for help, even if it's, you know, someone who's dressed in a shirt with a lanyard, anything like this, that they will be immediately detained or deported. So it's a really powerful tool used by exploiters. Signs of injuries that have gone untreated. So this could be things like a lot of the time during forced labour, people aren't registered with GPs, they're not going to medical services. So injuries that have been quite long ongoing or haven't been able to be treated. So things like broken bones that have been left to heal, or, you know, deep scars, things like this. Appearing malnourished and unkempt. Again, like I was saying, a lot of the time accommodation is really tied to these forms of exploitation, and it's not ideal accommodation. It's pretty rough. There are a lot of people who share rooms, mattresses, kitchens and bathrooms, so people aren't able to keep themselves healthy ultimately at the end of the day. Wearing unsuitable clothes, this is something that we might notice, and it kind of goes hand in hand with describing these long working hours violations, or, you know, deductions from wages. What we're ultimately trying to assess is if people that we're supporting don't look like they are being supported in their professional roles. You know, if someone says that they're working in a car wash, have they got a high vis on? Have they got, you know, suitable clothes to keep them from getting wet all day? If someone's working on construction, have they been given the training that they should have in terms of health and safety? Not having access to ID, again, and what we're saying here is not that someone's lost it, but perhaps someone's holding it for them. Perhaps you ask them to bring it along to an appointment and they say, well, it's being kept in a safe, or my partner has it and I don't know where he's keeping it. Things like this. It's an inability to access the ID that's quite common. Being over-reliant on one person, so this might be for accommodation, food, transport, and it kind of goes alongside here with this unequal relationships. A lot of the times exploiters will really kind of get involved, and if somebody's accessing your services, maybe they're coming along to those appointments or waiting outside, or sometimes we see this in terms of offering translation services. So you might not understand the conversations that's being had and what isn't being transferred in terms of information. Appearing coached, so very classic, where we see people who might give the same answer to multiple different questions because this is what they've been told by traffickers to say when speaking to authorities. Appearing fearful and anxious. So again, we would expect this in kind of many scenarios, but if we're talking to someone potentially about their history or their circumstances around their living situation or work, and people are becoming maybe tearful, shaky, not wanting to make eye contact, these might all be signs that there's something else going on that we kind of want to help and support and raise as a little bit of a concern. Okay, I'll hand over to Dean then to talk a little bit about what support is available here in the UK.
Thank you, Vivette. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the national referral mechanism, which we'll just call the NRM for the time being. It's a home office framework for identifying and referring potential victims of modern slavery to the appropriate support available to them. Okay, so after a referral is made and it's positive, which we would call reasonable grounds, support is offered for a minimum of 30 days. The average time in the NRM is over 500 days for a final conclusive grounds decision. Adults must consent, but not children, and referrals can only be completed by certain organisations called first responders. So we've got statutory first responders, which are going to be like police forces, the Home Office, including the UK Visa and Immigration, Border Force, Immigration Enforcement, the National Crime Agency, local authorities, and we've also got voluntary non-statutory first responders such as the Salvation Army, Migrant Help, Barnardos, NSPCC, etc. So all of these kind of help the government collect data about victims or survivors, which helps us build a clearer picture of human trafficking in the UK. And can I go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So yes, if you do happen to encounter a potential victim, obviously make sure you ensure your own safety and the safety of the victim is a priority. Immediate harm goes without saying, 999. Never to approach suspected perpetrators. They could be highly dangerous, and drawing attention could increase the chance of the harm to the victim. And there's some telephone numbers there for the Salvation Army and for also Unseen. Okay, so referrals are completed online, and we ask survivors to share their personal histories, and we approach with a trauma-informed lens. Documentation and evidence of exploitation can, of course, be submitted. And I think I'm handing over to Becky. Sorry, I kind of rushed through that.
Oh, I think I'm going next, and then I think Becky's just looking specifically at Hackney. But this is just a little bit of a kind of data set that we have. This is from some research that we did here at Hestia last year. And it's data from a Freedom of Information request about police crimes that had been registered as a modern slavery offence. And so we did this looking at each borough across London from 2020 to 2023, really to kind of highlight that this is an issue that is continuing to increase in the capital. So a 12.6% increase over the last 3 years, but also to highlight that this wasn't something that was, growing and increasing in certain boroughs. It really did fluctuate across the whole of the capital. In 2023, we don't unfortunately have the data set for 2024, but we could see that the hotspots were really in Westminster, and then I think it was Barnet and Newham. And it's unfortunately, it's one of those sets of data where you kind of want to ask a load of more questions. Why has Westminster come out so high? We can kind of think that this might be due to the fact that there's an excellent modern slavery lead in that borough. The police are therefore getting potentially more training and are more aware about what modern slavery might look like to log it specifically as that crime. But also potentially these are areas where people are going to report these crimes as they see that as a bit of a hub. And again, when we're looking at Barnet and Newham, it's kind of hard to know why these ones have really shot up in 2023 versus in 2020, where we can see mostly highly is Croydon, actually. But when we're specifically looking at Hackney as well, we can see that this is kind of not majorly kind of increased, but kind of stayed a bit steady. We've got 33 in 2020, 34 cases in 2021, 43 in 2022, but then back down to 31 in 2023. So it's again kind of looking at what what information are the police able to gather and put this down as a particularly modern slavery offence, and us in the community, how can we raise this and log these kind of concerns to make sure that we are getting potential victims the support and care they need? And I will hand over to Becky.
Thank you. Yeah, so ahead of today, I thought I'd do a bit of a deep dive into what we're seeing on the ground in Hackney. So this is specific to Hestia, just to give you an idea of how you might be able to support as well. So in terms of what exploitation are we seeing in Hackney? So I found that 69% of clients have experienced labour and financial exploitation. So it's quite high. The next highest was sexual exploitation at 18%, domestic servitude at 10%, and then criminal exploitation at 3%. So the highest being labour and financial exploitation. I thought was quite interesting. I also looked at first responders, so who is referring clients into the NRM in Hackney. And I was seeing that it was members of the Home Office who had the highest referral rates at 48%. And then we had the Met Police at 15%, Migrant Help, TSA and local authorities, social services at 10%, and legal reps, so mainly immigration solicitors, at 7%. And I also looked at needs of service users. So I was interested to see that 76% of service users we have in Hackney need support with their mental health. 25% have ongoing physical health needs, particularly, interestingly, mobility issues I saw in Hackney. 20% have dependents, so they have children, and 20% also have alcohol and drug dependency issues. So they're hoping to access those sorts of services. So yeah, just to give you an overview of what we're seeing on the ground in Hackney as of this week, some live data. So thank you.
Perfect. So that was a very kind of quick intro really to the topic of modern slavery and the kind of support that is going on here at Hestia, what we see. And this is just to say that we do offer training as well to anybody really who'd be interested. We do different kind of levels. There is also, I'm looking at talking with the Commissioner currently to discuss doing some training, and I'm not quite sure who that would be open to currently, but once that has kind of been finalised, I'm more than happy to share it with this group as well if it's open to everybody within Hackney. So I'll stop sharing the screen now and come back and see if I can see everyone, and we will go for some questions.
Thanks, guys. That was a really excellent presentation, really interesting. Josie's got a question in the... oh, you put your hand up as well. Do you want to come in, Josie?
Yeah, sorry. I came in a bit late, so I'm sort of sorry about that. But the figures that were just quoted, the percentages, how many people was that based on, just out of curiosity?
Sure, we have 26 clients based in Hackney currently.
Okay, so the percentages could change quite a bit just with one person, couldn't they? Yeah, no, I was just wondering how big or small the figure was.
Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Josie. Does anyone else? I had a couple of questions, but does anyone else want to come in at this point? No.
So many.
I was going to ask around what does kind of best practice look like from like a local authority point of view? I think you mentioned like Westminster has a really good lead, or is it kind of having a sort of, you know, like one person who's leading on the work across the council? Like how what does sort of good practice look like really from an LA point of view?
I don't know if Becky or Dean, you want to talk about potentially some boroughs you've worked with that have been really great, or like best practice that you've seen?
Yeah, so obviously we're supporting once clients have been referred into the NRM. So we're supporting mainly, well, my team particularly with outreach support out in the community. So, I mean, we are trying to improve our safeguarding referrals and how we're effectively doing safeguarding referrals and getting responses from safeguarding teams. Also, we have seen some issues with housing applications, and at the moment, survivors of modern day slavery aren't necessarily considered as priority need. So that can be like a barrier in getting housing. We're seeing an increase in the number of evictions from NAS accommodation, and they're happening quicker. So yeah, that's also been like a key theme. So I think it's just about like, yeah, how can we sort of get better responses to our safeguarding referrals, and housing applications definitely are the two priority areas for us. But I think it's about like identifying points of contact, so we can really gain strong strong partnerships and sort of redefine referral pathways and have those relationships, which is, I suppose, what today is all about. Yeah.
Cool, thanks, Becky. Caroline, did you want to come in?
Hi, my name's Pam. I work in the community care team, and it was just asking for some pointers, really. Sometimes I'm going to see people who are terminally ill, and sometimes at home you can see the overcrowding. You can see maybe someone's, they're clearing up. If I get there early, some mattresses on the floor, and sometimes people are really anxious as soon as you start mentioning any services or referring on. They think children are going to be taken away. People are really frightened. I think sometimes I can go in saying, I'm from health, I'm not going to, but I've had patients who've had their passports taken away because they were working for somebody, and then because they haven't got their passport, they don't have leave to remain, and it ends up really complicated for them to access services. So often they're accessing services late and can't be treated curatively, so they're young and they've got young children, and it's just, how do you think we can work with people so they're not frightened to access services earlier because they think they're going to be deported?
Yeah, I think you've raised a really great concern there, which is a lot of people who are being exploited. This is ultimately a way that an exploiter will control them, is to kind of put this fear about deportation, about kind of having kids removed, going into removal centres, and so I think it really is coming down to building that really good rapport, like you're doing when you're going in and kind of showing that you're a service who's there to help them and support and offer that, and kind of reiterate that when it comes to reporting their concerns, so things like accessing, especially around leave to remain, and kind of accessing that legal support, ensuring that the services that they will be reaching out to are going to be the same as you. It's going to be a non-judgmental, they're there to kind of support the rights, and there are ways to kind of access legal support. People can find out about the NRM and if they're entitled to it without that kind of compromising them. So calling up the kind of phone numbers that we gave, and you can do that as a professional, but actually they can call as well and speak to somebody and kind of know what pathways are open to them and kind of take it step by step.
Can I could someone like me ring if they don't give consent because I'm worried about children? Because sometimes if I've got someone who's terminally ill and I know they're going to leave young children, there's that, I don't want to go straight to children and families, although obviously I will liaise with them. And I think that's the trouble. Sometimes by the time they're involved with services, often it's too late.
Yeah.
And it's crisis management.
Yeah, that sounds really tricky. I think you can always call, so the unseen number, and I can put this again in the chat, is a really helpful helpline in terms of it's 24/7, it's completely anonymous. So you can call up and kind of get advice and guidance on terms of if you're seeing something like a scenario you've just described, and you kind of think, I don't really know what the next steps are. I don't know if this is modern slavery or not, or just what to do. Absolutely call them and they can give you that kind of support and offer you what the next steps are quite clearly. So do absolutely call for guidance in these scenarios is what I would say.
Often they're quite vulnerable, and obviously English is quite poor in the literacy, and so they then get penalised sometimes by health services saying they've accessed services too late, or they've left it late without the compassion and understanding about why they're presented late in A&E, and often it's in A&E because they haven't got a GP, and so there's a lot of, I think, for someone who works for health, a lot more compassion and inquisitiveness needed about why they're presented so late. And I think I had a patient recently who said the best thing that ever happened to her was getting cancer, and she was in her 20s because she was here illegally and been homeless and evicted from the home because she couldn't work. And that, she died in the hospice. And I just think that will always stay with me, the fact that it was the best thing that happened to her was getting cancer because she got help and support and died in a hospice in her 20s. And I just think, how bad do things have to be?
Yeah, that's really shocking. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It comes down to kind of trying to really understand kind of these barriers that are so real for a lot of the people we're supporting. This fear is not, yeah, it's not made up. It's really stopping, like you say, people from accessing support at all in any way, sharing their circumstances, which is really scary, because that is exactly what exploiters want. And, you know, whether they're being exploited or actually if they're just in these situations, they are so vulnerable from exploiters kind of identifying them and utilizing it. So absolutely, just as you are engaging with people and offering that support to kind of encourage them to engage with further sort of agencies, really.
I think sometimes as well, we need to make sure we're taking our own interpreters out, because I think we've had cases where people have used a family member to interpret, and it's been a very assertive man who's not obviously any relation at all, and it's somebody that's not a friend or a family, or not interpreting on their behalf, really, or advocating for them.
Yeah, 100%. We just don't know, unfortunately, what's being said in those conversations. So it's so important to make sure that we have someone that we can kind of have as a third party, really.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks for sharing all of that, Caroline. Does anyone else have any questions for the guys? I was going to ask, I'm sure it's obviously relevant to any services that are interacting with residents, but are there particular services or particular teams within local authorities which sort of you guys at Hestia are most sort of interested in talking to, or most concerned about, you know, making sure they understand everything you've explained?
Yeah, definitely safeguarding, definitely housing, like I said before. Yeah, I would say those are the priority areas, and just getting the message out to first responders. Like, you are all first responders, so you have that power to do the NRM referral if you are seeing people coming along to your clinics or whatever it might be, and sort of disclosing that they are in active exploitation or they have been in exploitation. So utilising the modern slavery referral line for those referrals, and also the unseen line as well. But yeah, I'd say definitely it would be amazing to establish some really strong working relations with the safeguarding teams and the housing teams in particular.
Yeah, and a lot of our advocates have to deal with kind of like the mental health workers and sort of social workers quite a lot. So yeah, I think kind of building those bridges be quite helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just thinking really how me and my colleagues in my team could possibly link you up with people in those teams offline. So yeah, happy to try and reach out to those services if that's helpful.
Thank you, that'd be amazing.
Cool. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments before we move on to the next item? No? Okay. Thanks very much to all three of you. It was really informative presentation. Yeah, and we'll share the slides and anything else you want us to put out. If you've got any sort of, I don't know, like fact sheets and things like that you want us to share in our newsletter, then just send them my way and I can put them in.
Perfect, I'll send that over to you. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks guys. Cool. So we're going to move on to the next item, which I'm going to be presenting. So let me just get my slides up. So yeah, so you can all see that now. So this is about these slides are quite brief and rough, by the way, just to flag that, but I'm hoping you're going to get the information from them. So this is a new fund which the government has set up as part of their digital inclusion action plan. So they basically kind of launched a new digital inclusion strategy, and one sort of facet of that is this digital inclusion innovation fund. So I think it's sort of £10 million overall, sort of for obviously nationally, and yeah. So basically, the reason why I sort of wanted to talk about it today was that Hackney, as the council, is considering putting a bid in for some funding as part of this, and we basically wanted to speak to partners on the call, whether that's people inside the council or outside, about any learning or any ideas or any thinking really that people had around digital inclusion that we would want to think about if we do put in a bid. And obviously we're sort of keen to work with partners in thinking about what a bid might look like, and then in delivery as well. So I'm just going to sort of talk quite briefly around what the fund is, so you have an understanding of what sort of things might come out of it, and then just talk briefly about some research that the council commissioned a year or two ago about digital inclusion. So yeah, it's a government fund. This is not a Hackney fund run by the council. This is a national fund. Local authorities, charities, so obviously voluntary sector partners can also bid for it, and research organisations can also apply. But NHS bodies and companies are not eligible. So, and you can also bid as a consortium. So in theory, the council could be a sort of lead organisation within a consortium and bid with other partners as well. Marcella, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just a quick one, because I was the one that went to the first webinar. I think only local authorities can be the applicant. So they are encouraging partnership where community organizations join the application, but the council has to be the lead applicant. Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying. And so in terms of the actual applications, there's kind of three main categories it falls under, which is the sort of 3 bullet points there under the second one. So it's sort of it's basically, the first one is around replicating or scaling examples of best practice, so things that we already know work, so sort of enhancing them or replicating them. Then there's a second bullet point, which is around sort of more innovation. So that's sort of innovative interventions that produce new knowledge and helpful evidence gaps on effective interventions. So that, I think they bids for that category. They also have to meet the government's research principles as well. So I think it has to be a kind of fully fleshed out sort of project which meets certain research guidelines basically. And then you've got the third one, which is around physical and intangible assets that can be capitalized, so equipment and inventory to support the delivery of digital inclusion activities may include laptops, devices and new software. And I think you can apply for a mix of fundings from categories 1 and 3 or 2 and 3. So you can, I guess what they're saying is you can apply to deliver a particular project, and and as well as that, you can apply for the devices that you would need, but you can't do an application for a mixture of 1 and 2, if you see what I mean. So that's kind of around the eligibility. These are the 4 areas of the government's action plan around digital inclusion. So it has to address at least one of these. So it's opening up opportunities through skills, breaking down barriers to digital services, tackling data and device poverty, building confidence and supporting local delivery. So it has to, if we do make a bid, we'll have to sort of explain how it meets at least one of those areas. So something to think about if people have ideas for things that they think are needed locally, about kind of which of those areas it might fall under. And it also must support at least one of the action plan's focus demographic groups, which you can see there. So we have to explain how this project, whatever it might be, would sort of support at least one of those groups. This is the dates for the fund. So the application has to be in by the 10th of September. So it's kind of 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's delivered basically until March 2026. So I guess it's a kind of roughly about 6 or 7 months length project. That's a kind of rough framework. This is just taken from some research that we commissioned by citizens online. Some of you might have actually been involved in it, or been one of the responders maybe. So we kind of asked them to do a bit of a deep dive, I suppose, into what's happening locally around digital exclusion. And
so they asked kind of what sort of support would service users most benefit having access to. So yeah, I suppose unsurprisingly, it's devices and help with connectivity. And then I guess it goes into a bit more about the kind of actually sort of teaching people, you know, how to get online and how to use digital devices. So yeah, I guess it's those three areas that we know people are challenged with. So it's like actually having the physical devices, it's having the connectivity, and then it's actually understanding, you know, how to use the tech, if you like. And then what is needed to tackle digital exclusion, they asked responders that. So again, probably not that surprising. It's around funding. So hopefully this project might you know, help with some of that. And then sort of one-to-one support, and you can see all the different things that people have said people need there. And I just picked out a few more themes really. So people were saying that this was kind of community partners and people who work at the council were saying people need access to informal support tailored to residents' needs. So not just delivering sort of cut and paste teaching and training. It has to be sort of rooted in what people, you know, need really, and resident focused. And yeah, a mix of support from those with expertise, but also those with a relationship with the residents. So we know that some people are very anxious about engaging with online services and worried about their data and things like that, or sort of kind of just not understanding it. So sometimes it might take a long time to actually build up that relationship of trust with the person so that they're happy to sort of go ahead with something digital related. So that was a really important point, I thought, in the research. More awareness of the support available. So we know that there's quite a few different things happening around locally, but do people know? And is there much joined up thinking, I suppose, around all of these individual bits of support? And then also just the research sort of emphasised the need to maintain having non-digital options. So even though obviously the world generally is moving towards everything being delivered online, that sometimes, you know, there will always be some people who that won't work for. So yeah, just maintaining more traditional offers as well. So that's really just a bit of background and information on the fund. And we just wanted to talk through some of these questions. So if the council was to put in a bid, what do you think would be most helpful for the residents that you might work with who are digitally excluded? Do you have sort of experience with best practice? Have you seen something that you thought worked really well, or something that's already happening which is working really well, which we might want to build upon? And then yeah, finally, how can we sort of work together to ensure that if we do receive funding through the project, through this fund, then it's, you know, delivered in an effective way, and you know, we work sort of across system, I suppose, to make sure that any support is there for people who need it. So I'm going to stop there. And yeah, open up the floor. Anyone who has anything at all really to share on digital inclusion, or anything they think would be helpful for us to know, feel free to come in. Not sure if you wanted to say anything else, Marcella.
Yeah, no, not really. I think it's just, as we discussed, it's really important to understand what, you know, would help most the community. So if we're putting a bid in, so yeah.
Cool. If people could also obviously email myself if they've got any information, or put me in touch with anyone who you think would be useful to talk to who's not on this call. But yeah, does anyone have anything they want to share at this point? Jahada.
Hi, John. Thank you for that information. I just wanted to know a little bit more about the digital inclusion, because one of the things that we have been doing at Family Action is offering digital skills support session to residents. And we've actually managed to deliver like 4 sessions. At the moment, we've taken a pause because we don't have any funding to further support these elderly residents who are struggling, you know, to even book appointments online for GP. I just want to know, you know, in terms of the funding, will it be allocated to the charities if we did, you know, show interest in terms of continuing to offer this service to our residents?
So charities can bid on their own. So in theory, Family Action could put a bid into the government, and then the funding would go your way, would obviously would be delivered to Family Action. But also, like one of the earlier slides said, different organisations could partner together to act as a consortium. So the council, in partnership with other charities in the borough, could come together and make one bid, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
And obviously that funding, I think Marcella was right in saying that the LA, so Hackney Council, would be the lead organisation, but obviously the funding would end up would obviously have to be going to the to the delivery. So it would have to be, we'd have to think about what that might look like. But happy to hear more about what you've been doing, Jahaja. If we could catch up outside this meeting and talk about it, if that's helpful.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Great, sounds good.
Yeah, and just thank you, Jahaja, for saying that. Just to add, I think after I said that, John, I went to check, because when the webinar happened, they were still finalizing details. So now apparently charities can apply as well if you're a registered charity. Before they said it was just local authorities. But I think, Jahaja, what you've been doing, the adult education team, adult learning in the council was doing some of this as well from community halls. And, it came to a similar, there is no funding or there is no staffing to deliver. So I think if there was a possibility of saying, demonstrate that there is evidence that this has an impact, because education, adult education would be able to provide this, because they have to report on the funding they had. And it would, enable more people to get access, because there are community organizations that can deliver this directly to their residents, because they have the space. And even if I think you can include an application saying you need devices to be able to teach the people.
Yeah, I think,
I think it would be possible. I think it would have to be a coordinated approach, perhaps with more spaces, more groups, and maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think the groups that we run were only 6 residents were able to attend, because we actually had it in our office and there wasn't much space in the meeting room. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I think it might be something to explore.
Sure. Thank you.
I think from the webinar, I understood they want really things that there is an aspect of innovation. If we have some mad ideas that haven't been tested before, come forward. But some of it is like things that there is knowledge that this works, so they want some evidence that it happened here or it happened in Canada and it was successful. Let's bring it to Hackney, or let's roll out in Hackney in more areas. I think in this research that John was quoting, it identified some pockets in Hackney, for example, where there's less advice happening or less provision, so we could say we're going to take this offer to these areas or to these cohorts of people, like people with disabilities or elderly people or single mothers or carers, so I think there is a real scope. I guess it's just timeline, isn't it? Because it's very short. But we can touch base with you, Jahaja, and then maybe Jackie from Adult Learning, who was leading on this before, to see if we could do some kind of joint approach. But it would be good to have more, to see if more organizations are interested. And I think one thing that we always get feedback is devices. We applied for some devices and we only got phones, and it's quite limited amount of phones. But only 2 days ago, I was like, do we have laptops that we can give out to people or loan out to people? So if anyone has knowledge of any lending program that was successful, I think it might be really useful to look at, because adult education runs some kind of scheme that was meant to be lending, but then people didn't return. And then there's some program that they were giving out, but it didn't necessarily reach the right people. Because if we just say we have lots of free laptops, it doesn't help a lot of people, I think. But I think the devices one would be a good one to focus on, because we know that is a big barrier. At the moment, you can get a free SIM card, to get data. But if you don't have a device to be able to put the SIM card in, what is the value of that for you? So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Marcella. I think it'd also be interesting to think about if if we were to sort of use the funds to deliver those sorts of classes, if you like, for people who are struggling, what are the key things? What are the key services, not just council, but sort of what are the key things that people need to be able to access that they're struggling to do at the moment, whether that's sort of GP appointments or, particular things that they need to do online, which they don't know how to do now. Just thinking it from that sort of user point of view. I don't know what sort of things have you been covering in the sessions you've been doing, Jahada?
So we've been covering from teaching residents the basic computer skills to booking appointments. One of the things that we're finding is elderly patients are not able to book or access GP appointments easily, so we're teaching them to go online and book appointment through the website, and also using a smartphone as well.
No,
Basic,
Have you
I just want to add on as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned about devices. One of the things that we were able to get was from the Goods Foundation.
Yeah.
So they gave us a donation of, I think it was about 20 laptops.
And that's excellent, because when we applied, we only got phones that we can distribute. Okay, wonderful.
Have you spoken to Emily May, Jahada, who is the Digital Inclusion Project Officer at Homerton?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. It might be good to bring her into this conversation as well, because I know she's doing lots of really good work.
Sure.
Does anyone else have anything they want to share around this? No? Okay. Well, if people do have any ideas they want to share, then just please get in touch with myself or Marcella, and Charlie, you put your hand up.
I guess it was a question to partners on the call, generally, because what we've discussed when we've spoken about this fund before is that we're aware that there's a lot of support out there in the borough for lots of different sort of things, but navigating that support is really difficult for residents and for professionals. So if you are finding ways that make navigation easier for people or for yourselves, that could be something we could explore in this as well. Like, how do we make the accessing what's available easier, or how do we represent that? I'm thinking like the Find Support Services map, which used to be a public health initiative. That might be something we could explore that makes that kind of where the support is clearer. We also, as I've said many times on this call before, we produced the cost of living guide, which again is in a paper, a kind of representation, but we know it's limited because one, there's so much out there, and two, it gets out of date so quickly. But just to kind of flag that kind of concern.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Okay, well, let's leave it there unless anyone else wants to come in at this point. But yeah, as I said, we'll put some comms out in the newsletter, and if people want to get in touch, then please do. Marcella?
Yeah, I think one thing to mention is that one program that exists is the digital buddies from libraries. That again, the education, adult education runs, but the limitations is managed by, it's led by a volunteer. I mean, it's coordinated by the council, but it's volunteers that might be free for 2 hours on a Saturday, but then they have an appointment, they have a holiday, they get a job, whatever is the reason. So there might be an opportunity as part of this project to fund time of some people that then allow for this to be a bit more regular over, say, 6 months, 8 months, to try and see the impact, especially in areas where that's not happening. And at the moment, that's only happening in libraries. But would there be scope for that to be happening? Say, Nicolette is no longer here, but for a digital buddy to be at the busiest day of her food distribution, that is someone that can be there, like the energy advisors go, that they can be helping people learn on their own devices how to do stuff that they might be struggling with. So that there is an opportunity, I think, to think about that as well. But these things, I think, to be more successful, as all the initiatives we have, we need to deliver it in partnership with all the community organizations, because they are the ones kind of on the front line, interacting with these residents that have the highest need. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Marcella. It's a shame we don't have more time before the bid has to go in to sort of do a bit more long-term thinking about it. But yeah, as you say, really keen to work with partners who are sort of actually on the front line in delivering this, because that's kind of the only way it will really be effective. Anyone else want to come in at this point? No? Okay. I will stop sharing my screen. So yeah, we've got some time left today. So we usually just open up the floor at this point. So if anyone's got anything they want to share with the group, any sort of support that's available for residents, any projects you're working on that you want to shout about, then, or questions you have for people on the call, then yeah, now's your chance. Please, yeah, come in at this point. Josie, you look like you're about to talk, but I don't know if that's...
I'm trying to think of something to say, but
don't worry.
It was something, but my mind's just gone blank. I was just seeing if I could by the chat to remember.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's all right. Marcella, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just briefly, I guess, Charlie, I don't know if it's worth mentioning the work around the higher value equipment that we're doing, and maybe the event that we discussed earlier today. Yeah, do you want to speak up? Because I've been speaking lots.
Okay.
Good to hear your voice.
Marcella and I have been scoping. So as I've mentioned on this call fortnightly, we've been working with Crew Energy to deliver energy advice across the borough over the last year, because we know that residents is one of the areas residents will be spending money on, and if we can reduce that, we can help. We can reduce their energy consumption, we can reduce their costs, is the idea. But we're aware that the interventions that we do with that energy advice company can be somewhat limited. And Hackney Light and Power, the kind of the part of the council Marcella works for, we have a limited budget to be able to deliver some higher value interventions. So these are things like maybe getting individual electric blankets, small radiators, air fryers, things that cost more money, but we're aware which will ultimately save residents a lot of energy and cost. But we want to make sure we get them to the right people. And it's a fairly limited budget, so we're not going to be able to give one to every single resident in crisis, but we want to work with partners to identify who they're working with who could really benefit from this. So it's kind of an open call to say, are you interested in working with us on this? And what are your thoughts about what that demand would look like? We're also speaking about maybe running some specific energy advice sessions over the winter with our colleagues who deliver that energy advice, but then having that equipment then to maybe one, or kind of also having other sorts of interventions available. It's just something we've been kind of working through over the last month in preparation for winter. Marcella, is there anything else I've missed off there?
No, yeah, I think on this one, I think it's fine. So I guess, yeah, what Charlie said is we're not able to buy one for everyone that might say that they need one, they want one. We know there will be lots of people that, if they could, it would help them. So initially we thought about, do we put some kind of eligibility criteria? But then if you put any eligibility criteria, there's always people who fall out of the eligibility criteria and who are in desperate need. So we kind of have gone the approach of, every community and organization, and there's lots of them that have had energy advice in their premises in the last year, have been contacted to see what would be the need be with your residents, and the same with the trusted referral partners and the library, mobile library service, and some other key council services. And one thing we're trying to gather is that there will always be residents that are outside of that. So now we're trying to figure out how do we then, because we can't just promote this and say, hey, if you need one, come here, because we wouldn't be able to cope with the need, and we don't want to be turning a lot of people away. So I think it's, we're trying to figure out how do we have some devices that can be tapped into that are not from these organizations that are already on the list that we're working with. So that's a challenge if people have ideas. And then, we are able, I think we are asking on this form, would you as a community partner need some funding to be able to help us deliver these devices? Because there's a lot of logistics in terms of getting these devices, finding out from a resident which device they prefer, what would have the biggest impact for them. So kind of, we understand community organizations are always stretched. We are quite lucky in our team to have some ring-fenced funding for this, so we might be able to provide a bit of funding to manage time of staff and things like this. And so let me just see your questions, Josie. Yeah, so Charlie is our guru. You were unmuted. You were muted, Josie.
We in terms of who to contact within different teams, Josie, do you mean? Or you're on mute?
You're on mute, Josie.
I am sorry. Yeah, Charles, how are you identifying the people that you go out to give the advice to, or have they been coming to you?
We work with different VCS organisations to deliver that advice. So we do go to libraries and things like some council institutions. We're often in the service centre, but we also believe in collaborating with the voluntary sector to meet the residents most in need. So it's an open offer basically to any voluntary sector organisation. If they would like an energy advisor to attend, we have we'll attend and we'll try and deliver alongside a session if we've got the availability. So we've worked with about 60 organisations in the last year to deliver advice. So it's quite a broad range of organisations all over the borough, reaching different cohorts. So I'm not worried about the representation or the representativeness of who we're working with. It's pretty broad, and it's always been an offer for since March last year. We've been kind of doing this, so we've got a fairly wide pool.
Yeah,
because I was only going to suggest, the housing benefits they can pull off lists of people that are on pension credits and things like that. So that was all I was going to suggest. They can isolate certain people for mail shots and things. But
I think that could have been a way we did it. But what we kind of decided to go for is that we trust that people working with residents, much like yourself, Josie.
It was just
who's in trouble.
Charles,
So
I'm just trying to think of things that might help you. That's all.
Yeah, and I think
the other team, it might be useful for you to talk to. Maybe the Here to Help team.
Oh, yeah, no, they are involved. Yeah,
we're talking to them. Emily's sent me an email during this meeting about it.
Right, good. Yeah.
And I think
I got it covered. I was just trying to help.
Well, thank you very much. And I think just, we could say everyone who is on pension credit, but there is a lot of single parents, single moms, younger people who are not on pension credit that are desperate as well. So we wouldn't be able to fund for everyone who's on pension credit anyway in Hackney, because that's a lot.
Yeah, I know, but
yeah. But thank you. I think we did think about what teams in the council and in housing. Shahidu is doing the financial kind of support for residents as well, so he's being involved. And then there is the community partners. And
I deal with a lot of people that are in substandard housing, so their bills.
So maybe you could help us as well identify some people.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not quite sure how to get an across the board sort of idea, but for example, there are people that are on meters and this and that, and so their costs are naturally higher, or the properties are not it's just the bum end of the housing market, to be honest. Properties that aren't properly maintained. So but I'm not. That would be probably on an ad hoc basis rather than. So I'm not sure what sort of numbers you're thinking. It's like, as I came across someone or people on my team came across people, we could refer to you, but I don't think there's a system you could pull out people from.
Yeah, at this point in time, we are trying to understand, there is a form that we send out to a number of partners in the council, outside of the council, and we can forward it to you. And it's a little bit saying, we won't be able to fund everyone. There's a lot of people in need. So think of the people who are most in need in this cohort that you support. How many would you refer to this scheme? To try and gather across the borough. But Charlie said we send this email out to about 100 people. So I'm already thinking we will really struggle to meet the needs because initial budget was 40,000.
Okay, I thought you were asking a way of identifying more people. So right.
But we can include you because I think it sounds like a very important. Did you get the email, Jahada?
Yes, we did.
So is this, there might be some crossover, Georgie, between people that we help in the council and people that the VCS organizations are. So we're trying to work out the logistics because, you know, this is in addition to the jobs we do already. We want to try and do something before winter, before it gets really cold and the bills are really going up. So it's a little bit of a pilot, but yeah, maybe we'll touch base with you outside and get the form to you because possibly you are a team that could also help us identify. And then the other thing that we're talking about is, John, we were talking about before, like having one of the session that is preparing for the winter. You know, trying to bring organizations like AG UK, like Crew Energy, and other services that can help. So everyone that works in this scene kind of can know what the other services available are. So maybe, we're thinking about maybe trying to organize something like that. And maybe in person, we could possibly pay for venues and stuff if it was necessary. Yeah. And then we're thinking also of maybe doing some events because the winter warmer is not going to happen this year. The council is not able to fund. So trying to think about maybe we could do some smaller events in community halls, maybe one in the north, one in the south, and similar, trying to advise residents on the different services and try to bring the same organizations that might come and offer stall at the winter warmer. So we're going to be looking at that as well.
That sounds really good. I think in some in-person meetings or events would be really good. Jahada's community centres are for social prescribing advice and it can contribute to this. Great, thanks, Jahada. Cool. That all sounds really positive. Thanks for sharing, Charlie and Marcella. Does anyone else have anything they want to share or ask a question about before we close the meeting? Nope. I was just going to quickly say that anyone who's not heard about it, we have designed an escalation route for council tax inquiries for those that are particularly complicated or are relating to sort of vulnerable residents. So yeah, if you and your service or organisation is sort of regularly dealing with sort of really complex council tax issues with residents, then and you'd like to be able to access the route, it's basically just a Google form. It's fairly simple. Just get in touch with me and I can add you to that list of services. So it's for people inside the council or community partners or anyone working locally, basically. So yeah, just feel free to get in touch with me. Cool. All right. Let's wrap it up there then. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming as usual, and we'll see you in a fortnight, hopefully. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.